Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. Let's get ready to rumble!
That's right, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Best Seat in the House podcast. I'm your host, Rob Cramer, as always, alongside my co-host, Daniel Bobo Kurlan. And Dan, how you doing today, buddy?
Not doing good. Not happy with the outcome of the game, unfortunately. That was one of those games where whatever the outcome, one run was going to feel like an astronomical lead. The way both pitchers were pitching, and it even looked like that game, Buck Showalter, the way he was managing that game, bringing Edwin Diaz in the eighth, it looked like he was managing that game like he knew one run was going to be an astronomical lead if he had popped up one run, and we were on the wrong end of that one.
Yeah, unfortunately today, the Mets they played a great game, from a defensive and pitching standpoint. I mean, Taijuan Walker just continues over his last 4 or 5 starts, has just been really the best and most consistent pitcher in the Mets rotation during that time span. Chris Bassett has gone back and forth, and he's had a couple of good starts, a couple of bad starts. So hopefully he's starting to get on track too. But man, where would the Mets be without Taijuan Walker right now, right?
I feel like Taijuan Walker has been the unsung that unsung pitcher that probably flies under the radar, but he's been carrying the team so far.
Yeah, I think a lot of people downplayed his importance in this rotation because of his poor second half last year, where he really just got lit up, and after an all-star first half where he actually made the all-star team, really came out in the second half, and it all started in that post-all-star break series in Pittsburgh where he got lit up in that first inning, and that was pretty much the way his second half went. But he's really come on strong here the first half again. And, you got to give him credit for coming back to that. And, he really had only thrown a very limited amount of innings due to COVID and injury the previous couple of years and everything. So there's a reason why he slowed down in the second half. And it may have been, as they were talking about during the game today, it may have been as much of a mental wall as it was a physical wall. I mean, right?
Yep, I feel that affected him, and I feel like I've seen a trend throughout baseball, especially last year. It looked like a lot of pitchers, even were affected by the stop and start situation they went through in 2020. If you remember last year, they had started spring training. Then all of a sudden, the COVID, everything went to a screeching halt. And then all of a sudden, they at one point somewhere in the summer, they announced we're going to start the season up again. Then they all of a sudden had to revamp everything and start up again, getting ready for the season. And all of a sudden, in August, they had to be mid-season form, and it was a short season. I also think this season may have affected several players with the late start and the shortened spring training.
I totally agree. Yeah, you see, a couple, I would say a lot of the injuries we're seeing, especially to the legs and soft tissue injuries and stuff like that, definitely have a lot to do with the lack of spring training they had this year, the lack of running. A lot of these guys didn't have their legs underneath them when the season started. So I think you're starting to see a lot of the guys round into shape now. So it's looking pretty good for a lot of these guys. Obviously, you have guys like Aaron Judge and Pete Alonso, who came out of the chute this year firing on all cylinders. So obviously some guys had their legs under them, even Max Scherzer. But I think Scherzer's injury could even be because of the shortened spring training too, where, he might have thought that his body was in tip-top shape, but especially at 37 years old, you really have to be careful with that, right?
Yeah, I feel they can't really play around with that. Anything that would mess around with their spring training routine, especially with pitchers, it seems like. I always felt like the reason why spring training sometimes is that long, I feel like is a big factor. Probably more the pitchers than it is the position players. They seem
Yeah.
to take ready than the position players, if you ask me.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. And so we'll get more into the Mets in a little bit, but I do want to touch on a couple of things right off the top here, just to go around the league, if you will, kind of just all the sports stories around right now. The Stanley Cup was awarded over this past week too. After our last show, the Tampa Bay Lightning couldn't keep it going as their march for a third straight Stanley Cup fell a little bit short, and the Colorado Avalanche won their first Stanley Cup championship in 21 years. What do you think of that series, Dan?
That was like that seemed to be like it seemed to be a close series. I mean, somehow this team that Tampa that was looking like they were looking like they were becoming all of a sudden the New England Patriots of hockey, a franchise that wasn't known for winning, and all of a sudden they looked like they were becoming a powerhouse. Somehow Colorado pulled off the upset and they managed to win it. And to anyone watching here from Colorado, even some friends of mine or maybe some people from Colorado who stumbled upon this show, congratulations on your championship. Enjoy it. Try not to party too much, and hopefully, I don't know Colorado's reputation for things getting a little out of hand with the championship celebrations, but you don't want to just you probably don't want to destroy someone's car.
Yeah, very true. And also, the Stanley Cup took a little bit of a beating during their celebration. Did you see that? How they dented the bottom of it?
I heard about that. That almost reminds me of the legendary story that happened supposedly in 1994. I heard things got. I mean, the partying was off. I heard was off the wall when the Rangers won the cup. That I recall, the cup was returned. They had to. The repairs were very extensive. Repairs had to be made with the thing. I heard, and there was even. I even once saw Stefan Monteau said that he had to use something like a soldering iron or something to he had accidentally broke the Stanley Cup during that time.
Oh my God, that sounds about right with the amount of partying that went in when the Rangers won that first cup again since 1940, back in 1994. So that definitely sounds about right, especially with those guys on that team. So yeah, that was a very close series with Colorado and Tampa Bay. Obviously, it would have been great to see the Rangers in that series instead of the Lightning, and have us be the team that ended their streak and their run and everything. But unfortunately, the Rangers ran out of gas in the end there. But it was pretty cool seeing Igor pick up his Vezina, and I do think too that I think Gerard Gallant got the short end of the stick. I think he should have been more in contention for the Coach of the Year award, right?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like he should have been Coach of the Year. He got this team that I don't think anyone expected to get as far as they did, and we got pretty far. I mean, just look at pictures and the dates that I had a thick beard, and that'll answer your question right there.
Well, it's true. Actually, when the season started, I had a little hockey preview show on my radio show on WGBB here on Long Island. And during that show, I picked the Rangers to make the playoffs as a wild card, which they ended up, finishing in the top three, thankfully. But I picked the Rangers to make the playoffs. And a lot of people were calling me a homer just for picking the Rangers to make the playoffs. Now, not only did the Rangers make the playoffs, they finished second in the division. They won 52 or 53 games, whichever it was, and they ended up going to Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Final, taking off the Penguins and the Hurricanes in the way. So, I really agree with you in the fact that I think that Gallant should have been given much more consideration. Although you have to tip your cap to Daryl Sutter and what he did with the Calgary Flames, because even though the Flames had a very good season too, I think the Rangers are just a little bit better, right?
Yeah, I think they were definitely a lot better, and he probably is one of the biggest snubs since I can't recall when the last time I saw a big snub like that.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. It's unfortunate, but at least Igor locked down the Vezina. That would have been, you know, a joke if he didn't win that. Which there were a couple of times with Lundqvist where I thought Lundqvist got squeezed out of it too, where they gave it to, whether it be Carey Price or whoever of that era. So, thankfully we got that. And hey, there's a lot of bright things ahead for the Rangers right now, and hopefully in a couple of years, if not next year, we'll be raising the Stanley Cup just like Colorado is right now. And congratulations to Cale Makar and Nathan McKinnon and Naz Kadri and everybody on that team, especially the guys that have been there for decade and everything, have been up through the ups and downs. I mean, you got to remember, Dan, this team was the worst team in hockey just 4 or 5 years ago, right?
Yeah, I remember that. They were like in the bottom, and they went from worst to first.
Yeah, you're right. They used all those draft picks right. They Makar fell in their laps. This is only his third year in the league, and hopefully it's a lot like the Rangers too, where they tore everything down. Maybe not as willingly as the Rangers, but they tore everything down. I don't think the Rangers were ever the actual worst team in the league at any point over the last couple of years, but they were really freaking bad for those last couple of years under Alain Vigneault and the first year or two under David Quinn. So, things didn't exactly come together quickly as this year, really. I mean, the Rangers ended a 5-year playoff drought, essentially. So, very good stuff, and congratulations to those guys, right, Dan?
Congratulations.
Yeah. So, and with that, we'll move on too, because I also do want to touch on a little bit later the Yankees, and very, very weird week for them too, as they had a series against Houston actually too. Houston's been playing a lot of New York, and they got the Yankees over the weekend. And did you happen to catch that no hitter? The Yankees got no hit, a complete game. Christian Javier had an incredible game, 7 innings, 13 strikeouts, no hits, 1 walk. And to hold that Yankee offense that long is just crazy to begin with. But just really, really awesome stuff. What a crazy no hitter, right?
Yeah, I was actually on my way to a Brooklyn Cyclones game, right? And at the portion of the train that it was like above ground, right? So I was seeing some Yankee fans on Twitter talking talking about the game. I took a look at it via their app, right? Via one of the network's apps, I think the Yes app, and there were no hits, and that surprised me. That team got a no hitter, but it doesn't surprise me that even the furthest that Houston, out of all things, would probably be one of the teams that no hit the Yankees. That Houston looks like one of the ones that has good pitching. Gonna have good.
Yeah, I agree, man. Houston is a hell of a team. They got a hell of a rotation, as the Mets saw up close over the last 2 days. Houston, I mean, how many times do you have a team have their starting pitcher go 8 shutout innings back-to-back days against the team? And not to mention a team like the Mets, who were one of the best offensive teams in baseball. But you know what? As we move on here, we'll really get into the Mets right now. As when you really think about it, the Mets really have been slipping over the last week. I mean, if you go back to the last 3 games, the Mets are 2 for 25 with runners in scoring position. That's the last game that they lost in the walk-off homer on Sunday against the Marlins, which was just a heartbreaker, and then the 2-game sweep again against the Houston Astros. 2 for 25. Now, if you want to stretch that out even longer, over the last 7 games, going back to the 3 they had against the Marlins, the 2 against and the 4 against Houston, the 2 this week and the 2 last week. The Mets are 6 for their last 49 with runners in scoring position for a 122 batting average. This is a team that before this stretch started was the number 1 team in baseball with runners in scoring position, hitting 289. Even at one point, a week or two ago, it was 291 to lead the league. And this stretch has dropped them down to 275 right now. The Cincinnati Reds lead the league now with a 282 runners in scoring position batting average. So just really bad numbers over the last couple of weeks for the Mets. What do you think, Dan? You think this is the beginning of a trend, or you think it's just a blip on the radar?
So far, I'm thinking it's just a blip on the radar. They gotta bounce off, and I feel they need to get a big win before it gets out of hand. I feel they snap this streak, they'll be good. I also feel that they need to probably remain in first place. Here during the second half when they were playing catch up, that's when that seems to always be the case with us when it gets a bit dicey whenever we try to play catch up.
You're right, and the Mets are really on the brink right now. I mean, today is their 3rd straight loss. It's the first time this season that they've lost 3 straight games. Their lead at this exact moment at 6 p.m. on Wednesday night, June 29th, the Mets have a 3.5 game lead in the division. So the Mets are really big Philadelphia Phillies fans tonight, because if the Phillies win, then the Braves drop back to being 4 games out. But if the Phillies lose and the Braves beat them tonight for the 2nd straight night, then Atlanta will climb to within 3 games of first place, which the Mets just cannot have. And look, I understand that during this run, they lost James McCann. They have not had DeGrom all year. They lost, McNeil for a week before this. They lost Max Scherzer for the last over a month now. And Scherzer's working his way back. He's got that rehab game tonight now in Binghamton. They're going to hope to get him up to, maybe 5 innings, 75, 80 pitches, and then he'll be ready to go next time, which I'm glad they gave him that extra day. Right, Danny? You glad they gave him the extra day?
I felt Buck made the right decision. I know we all remember Max Scherzer making the quote, "I don't want to be a rumble pony," when he said that, but at the same time, Buck may have made the right decision. We didn't want to rush him back. We may come back a little later and avoid being out for the season a lot later.
I agree. And you know what, though, too? Even though the rotation, look, everybody saw the thing. Before Scherzer went down, the Mets team ERA was like 2.67, right around there, 2.7, right around there. Since then, it's been over 5. I think it was 5.22 since Scherzer went down. So, look, I understand that that's a combination, too, of James McCann being down and Scherzer not being in there and no DeGrom. But you know what? The fact of the matter is that Carlos Carrasco's had 2 crap starts over the last week. That's a fact. But other than that, the Met pitching has been pretty decent, at least over the last week. They haven't been getting blown out, except for those Carlos Carrasco starts. But the other thing is that their pitching wasn't the problem today. Their inability to get a big hit was the problem. Their inability to get a big hit on Sunday when they had to lead the entire game and then blew it right at the end. Same thing with the game where they lost 5-3 in Houston last week. Sure, they got blown out the night before, but they had a chance to win that second game. But they just couldn't come through with the big hit when it mattered. Dan, we're about to enter July now. Our next show will be after the 4th of July. Will be a week into July. So trade season and the trade rumors are really going to start heating up. I mean, obviously we got DeGrom and Scherzer coming back. I still hear people pushing for the Mets picking up another starting pitcher. But, I mean, obviously the Mets, in my opinion, really desperately need to bring in a big-time lefty in their bullpen. And not only that, I think they should start looking at bringing in a bat now, too. A power bat to complement and protect Pete Alonso. What do you think about that?
They need to make the move. They need to get another bat, and hopefully that Steve Cohen just said recently that he'll spend whatever it takes for his team to win come trading deadline.
He did say that. He said that he will do whatever it takes. But the other question I have too is, I wonder if the Mets are going to have the prospects that they're willing to give up to get a big time bat to stick in the middle of this lineup. Maybe a guy that could be a full-time DH. One thing that's interesting to me is, would you have any interest in a guy like Nelson Cruz from Washington? Yeah.
Nelson Cruz, maybe I'd be open to the Mets getting if they didn't have to give up much.
Yeah, because that's what I'm thinking. It would come relatively cheap for prospects wise.
Yeah, exactly. If it wasn't for much, because he's pretty much on the last year of his contract. Actually, he's pretty much, if I'm correct, on the last year of his career.
He's probably close to it. I mean, he's 41, 42 years old. So, but he's still got that pop. And you know what, though? Even though if it were me, I don't know if I would have Nelson Cruz as the everyday DH. Still, that would be a pretty big-time power bat to have, not only coming off the bench, but the ability to stick him in a game every once in a while,
Yeah, exactly. Another interesting thing we might have to look for in the second half is that I don't know if you've been seeing Alvarez, or catching prospect in Double-A, but the way he's hitting, it looks like he's trying to make a statement.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree.
Because the way it's gonna force the hand with ownership and the GM on when he gets called up, and I think it's possible we could see him maybe get called up, maybe limited as a catcher for this year, but probably DHing a lot.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it, man. I mean, when that is one thing that I've heard people bring up, that maybe even if you don't think his skills are major league ready behind the plate, if you believe that his bat can make it in the big leagues, which, hey, you know what? The way that a lot of people and talent evaluators in baseball talk about Double-A is that Double-A is really the proving ground, where, if a kid can swing it in Double-A, they're probably going to be able to do it at Triple-A and then the major league level too. That's where, you separate the men from the boys type deal, where, and you see the domination that he's put on. That's one thing that I was worried about. When he first got promoted to Double-A last year, it took him a little while to get the league, and he finally got it. And boy, he is tearing it up right now. He started off the year tearing it up too, but then he went into about a 2 or 3 week, spell in May where he really wasn't hitting too much. But boy, all of June and the end of May and everything, this kid has really picked it back up. And it's really going to be cool to see him up close when he eventually does make his Mets debut, right?
Exactly. And the amazing is, this is another one of the players I've gotten to see when he was in the minors. And I have his autograph on a Brooklyn Cyclones program.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, he's one of those guys, man, that just came through the Mets minor league system.
Yep, exactly. Because we have one affiliates out here in the area, I'm lucky enough to have seen him play, and the guy he just looked like he could hit even back then.
Oh yeah, yeah, you could tell. And the kid's only 20 years old, so he's only going to get better, and it's only going to be, it's going to be a lot of fun watching him progress as a professional baseball player and eventually a major league baseball player. So yeah, we got that to look out for. There's definitely going to be some moves in the coming weeks for the Mets. No doubt about that. As an interesting thing now coming up for them is that they have the Texas Rangers this weekend. It's been a couple of years since we've seen the Mets play the Texas Rangers. What are you looking for when they play Texas, Dan? I mean, we got a couple of big names on here with Semien and Corey Seager joining this team. Is there anything specific that you have your eye on about the Texas Rangers?
Probably more they're hitting more than they're pitching. So they got to be able to not this series they can't give up many runs against these guys. Even though Texas looks like right now they're more of a middle of the road team, probably shouldn't be taken lightly.
Yeah, and you have to remember too, the Mets, on Friday they're getting this kid Otto, who is not that great. He's got an ERA over 5. He's 4-3, and he's going against Chris Bassett, which is definitely in the favor of the Mets. But on Saturday, the 4:00 game the Mets get against the Rangers, they are facing their best pitcher, who has the exact same ERA that Verlander had coming into today, a 2.22 ERA. So he's top 3 or 4 in the league in ERA over there. And then after that, the Sunday day game, getaway day for the Mets, as they're going to be traveling to Cincinnati after the game. They get John Gray, who is a big name that they signed from Colorado after the lockout ended and everything. So John Gray going to Texas. Many people didn't really think about it, but he's actually had a pretty good year for them. And I mean, if you team up him and Martin Perez, who is also back in Texas after a couple of years over in Boston, and he looks great. So the Mets are actually catching 2 of the more talented and better producing Texas pitchers this weekend. So the Mets got to do something. Their offense has to wake up. And I don't know if what Eric Chavez wants to do as the Mets new hitting coach and hitting guru that they got back there, but they got to wake these guys up.
Exactly, they need to offer Jabu that rum and wake up bats.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe they got to get a visit from the imaginary hitting coach they had last year. What was his name again? Donnie something. Donnie Stevenson, right? Wasn't that it?
That's the guy. Offer Jabu some rum for the Mets bats.
Definitely going to need that. The Mets definitely could offer Jabu some rum, and maybe that'll wake them up because it's been brutal over the last week watching these guys go at it. And you knew they weren't going to hit at a 290 clip all year in the clutch situation, because that's just unrealistic. The pitchers are going to get the better of you every once in a while. And, the Mets really just have to keep going back to what they're doing. Keep that average steady. Don't let this runners in scoring position average start dropping into the 260s. Keep it up here. One of the biggest guys they've gotten is Jeff McNeil. Getting him back the last couple of days has been big, because he's one of their better clutch hitters this year, along with Pete Alonso, who was hitting over 350, but his clutch numbers have dropped into about the 330s over the last couple of games as well. So let's just keep our fingers crossed in the Mets. And one big thing, and this is a guy too that I loved this signing at the time, but offensively, boy, has he been a disappointment. Aside from his cycle in San Diego, was Eduardo Escobar, right? What a disappointment offensively so far.
So far, it's been disappointed, and I'm hoping he lives up to what he said would happen.
Yeah, he said what a couple weeks ago too, that he's hoping that he can start giving the fans something to cheer about. Which it's good to hear that, and it's good to him to acknowledge too that he hasn't been playing up to par so far. But man, if they could just get Eduardo Escobar going, which I thought he was going to be great for them. I thought the switch hitter, he could protect Pete Alonso, he could hit for power. This is a guy who hit 35 home runs and drove in over 100 runs a couple of years ago. So I thought that he could bring that kind of numbers and production here. But we just haven't seen it yet, man. And we really need to see the best of Eduardo Escobar, at least over the, a short stretch. Give us something.
Exactly. We need at least a hot streak going on.
Yeah. I mean, boy, we need something because the Mets definitely need a spark plug right now. All right, now that we got our Mets talk out of the way, we got a lot of other stuff to get into. And, I was going to jump into the Yankees, but me and you started touching on the Knicks there for a second. So let's talk some Knicks right now as, also too, just going down as we're recording this, Woj from ESPN and all his NBA breaking news and everything just reported that the Knicks lost out on DeJounte Murray, who was a backcourt guy from the Dallas, where is he? The Dallas Mavericks, I believe. Oh, no, the San Antonio Spurs. And very good player who apparently the Knicks just got outbid by the Atlanta Hawks. Disappointing that they couldn't come up with this. They also had, a deal go down the other day where they acquired Dallas's Jalen Brunson. So they're starting to retool things after their crazy draft night, which we'll discuss in a minute. But Dan, what do you think the Knicks are doing right now?
Knicks, just our history with our screwing up offseason. Always scratching my head. Well, for one thing, let's go back to that offseason where we thought we were getting LeBron James, who was going to bring over two other guys to form a super team. He ended up, remember, he was all hyping up that whole ESPN special.
Oh, yeah.
Remember we all on TV to watch it? We're all excited. I remember seeing one person on social media who's a Knicks fan. He went as far as getting custom done orange and blue LeBrons colors in anticipating that on LeBron James. Well, that one backfired. We're all watching that special, turning on a TV. We're all anticipating it. And the moments he said he's signing with Miami and he's bringing on, I think it was Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, you would not believe the curses I said. I was yelling out at TV. I think 7 deadly words. I may have found a way to yell out all 7 deadly words in one setting. How it was. Then remember the off year, we were tanking really bad. Remember that off season 2019? We're turning on a TV. We're watching the draft lottery. I remember it was after an Eastside Dave show. I was at John Sullivan's, and I'm sitting there, and Dave may have saw me react to it, and a couple of other people. Big A had never seen me curse and be outraged like that. We did not get the number 1 draft pick. Then there's the other offseason. We were several big free agents, only to find all those free agents turned the Knicks down and went to the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving specifically which it looks like the Knicks might have dodged a bullet there too, buddy, because the Nets right now are in a complete state of disarray. They've granted Kyrie Irving, the ability to go seek a trade. It just really, really weird stuff. And Kevin Durant, it's still not even a 100% certain that he's going to be back, especially if Kyrie goes. So the Nets definitely have their issues. But, back to the Knicks, when we look at this draft night, so they were supposed to draft 11th. And they traded down. They got the 13th pick and some extras. They traded the 13th pick and Kemba Walker and, shed some cap space, which was okay. I understand that they want to open up the cap. They pick up Jalen Brunson. They try to pull off this most recent trade today. You got to hope that there's a guy like Donovan Mitchell just waiting to come in here sometime, because it looks like he's getting sick and tired of what's going on down there in Phoenix, where he is right now. And, maybe he's going to be coming to New York soon. What do you think about that, Dan?
I have a feeling, too. I feel like the build-up for him potentially coming to the Knicks is literally written on the wall. He keeps hanging out in New York a lot during the offseason. He's been spending a lot of time in New York. And he's even been, and I see a lot of people, he seems to show up at a lot of Met games a lot.
He's a big Mets fan. His dad is a big Mets guy, a big Mets executive. At least at some point he was. I don't know if he still is working with them, but they have a lot of ties to the area.
And I think Donovan Mitchell kind of seems to be intrigued by the idea of him. He kind of wants to be near where his parents live.
Yeah.
So, possibility we could be seeing him in a Knicks uniform, and I would be jumping. No, it'd be the complete opposite of all those what I just told you about it from our past.
Yeah, he is the type of guy the Knicks need. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the star power and the production that the Knicks need right now. If you plug him into this, into this team right now, and you surround him with guys like R.J. Barrett, who's coming into his prime, and Quickly, and Mitchell Robinson, who's been a great defensive presence, and then hopefully, maybe in a Donovan Mitchell trade, you could jettison, what's his name? Who's the big guy for the Knicks this year? What the hell's his name again? Why can't I think of it?
I forget the guy's name.
Yeah, I mean, you are obviously such a big basketball fan. Oh, Julius Randle. Yeah, that's why I just couldn't think of it. But
like we got so it's like looked like we were tanking so bad during the last couple of months of the season that it looked like it wasn't going to be, we're going to make it.
Yeah, that was from January on. Watching this Knicks team was rough. You just got the feeling that Julius Randle, for whatever reason, was disgruntled. What? Because the fans booed him? Sorry, buddy. That's what happens in New York. When you don't play up to the level that we expect you to play, and it's costing the team games, you're going to get booed. That's why I did not think that it was a right move for the Knicks to extend Julius Randle. Sure, do I think that he deserved to be rewarded for the fantastic season he had the prior year? Of course, he deserved it, but he did not deserve a big-time extension. I just knew it was trouble. The second they did it, it was almost like a harbinger of things to come. You just knew that Julius Randle was gonna, whatever, just have a really crappy season, and that's exactly what he did. He ended up making his numbers look decent at the end, but if you watched this team this year, man, they were just nice where Julius Randle was just not even existent on the court for the Knicks. So I really hope they find a way to get rid of him, and I really hope they find a way to bring in Donovan Mitchell, because I think that would be a real fun team to watch next year, especially too since they said that Derrick Rose is coming back, and he's a fun guy, especially with Thibodeau as his coach. And I'm glad the Knicks didn't do anything stupid like fire Tom Thibodeau this offseason, right, Dan?
Exactly. And I feel so many people around the NBA, I think a lot of networks, maybe even the NBA, is eager for this to finally see the Knicks being contenders again.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it.
Just drives up the viewership.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. You think that the NBA would have been happy to see a New York team in the Final Four in the going to the conference finals this year. No doubt about it. Sure, I'm glad that I'm sure they love teams like Milwaukee and that stuff. Although I'm sure they were happy Boston was involved too, because Boston is a big city. But man, if you still have the Knicks involved like that, even the appeal of Boston it just loses compared to New York, and the volume of eyes and stories and people talking about it that a New York team, specifically the Knicks, because look, we saw the Nets go on their fucking run the last year or two, and what did it really matter in the end? I feel like people forget the Nets even had a run with Durant and Kyrie, right?
Yeah, I don't even think there was ever a lot of interest even for the Nets to even move to Brooklyn. I just think it felt like something that ownership was pushing, and just some people that might have been some elected officials that thought there was going to be a lot of money from this. But
yeah,
I saw a big push for another team in New York.
I will say this though, until the day I die, James Dolan is the worst owner in sports because he allowed the Nets to move into the city. The fact that was even allowed, and that they were able to go into Brooklyn, which is Knicks country. The fact that the Nets were allowed to move into Brooklyn, which the Knicks had to approve, by the way, is just ridiculous. I cannot believe that this guy allowed that to happen. The Nets should still be in Jersey, or if they wanted to come back to New York, they should be out on Long Island. They should not be in Brooklyn.
Yeah, exactly. And then of course, there's plenty of other we can say that Dolan screwed up, because there seems to be a lot of players that we seem to have a lack of wanting free agents to come here because of Dolan.
Oh yeah, I think that's lesser now, because I think right now, even though they had the rough year this year, I think Leon Rose has kind of righted the ship a little bit. I think he's given a lot of credibility to this team for whatever reason. I think he's widely respected. I remember when the Knicks hired him, they actually quoted Donovan Mitchell as saying, Leon Rose being his former agent, saying how much he loves Leon. And I think his exact quote was that I love Leon to death, all that stuff. So I definitely think Leon Rose has the Knicks presented. He's kind of like the firewall between the Knicks, the NBA, and James Dolan. So I think Leon is doing a good job in that respect. But right now, we just got to see. Right now, the Knicks are a work in progress. We got to see what direction Leon Rose is taking the Knicks in this offseason. We've seen some wheeling and dealing go on yet. Free agency should be starting shortly. I don't know how flexible the Knicks can be in that, especially if they're trying to keep space open for a potential trade for a big salary guy like Mitchell. But I don't know. I'm optimistic right now, Dan. What do you think? Are you expecting this to be one of those head scratcher summers where we're kind of wondering what is going on, or do you think that things are going to just fall in place?
Well, I'm hopefully right now that things are going to fall in place, and I feel if we made that move, we ended up with Donovan Mitchell, it could be leading us on that right path to potentially us becoming a contender. If not this year, the following year, we could be seeing one of those moves that's going to affect the next couple of seasons.
Very true. Very true. And the East is wide open. We don't have any LeBron Cavaliers team holding us down or LeBron Miami Heat team holding this down anymore. The East is wide open. That's why we saw the Celtics go on a run this year. The Nets, they were okay, but there's a lot of turmoil going on there right now. And while people, including myself, expected the Nets to get a grasp on the East and be that beast in the East for a couple of years at least, they never did it. They got knocked off by Milwaukee, and they got knocked off again this year by Boston. And I'm not expecting to see a Nets revival at any point in the next little while, at least. Depending what Durant does, depending what Kyrie does. So, but it looks like that team is on the outs right now, and especially when Harden forced his way out of there, I think that was the beginning of the end of the Nets, right, Dan?
Yeah, that looked like the beginning of the end. It looked like they're what they expected was going to be a dynasty is falling short of it, big time.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. And with that, I like the little basketball talk we got in there right now. But we're talking about we're gonna shift over to the Yankees here now as we're finishing up now too. We'll touch on the Yankees for a few minutes. Crazy no-hitter over the weekend that we just discussed a little earlier. Very interesting week the Yankees have had. They had 2 walk-off wins sandwiched around that no-hitter last Saturday. Then they smacked the A's around this week. They were down 3-0 today, but that was erased immediately by Giancarlo Stanton as he crushed a 3-run shot. They got the walk-off home run from Judge the other day. Judge hit his 29th today, as just really incredible. Luckily for the Yankees, too, they settled with Aaron Judge finally for their arbitration contract for this year. He's getting paid $19 million. The Yankees offered 17. Judge wanted 21. They settled right in the middle. Boy, Dan, I mean, with the incredible season that Judge has had, and under the radar, too, the great year that Giancarlo Stanton has had.
A couple of things. For one, I think Giancarlo Stanton has probably finally gotten a hang of the high expectations that I feel playing for either one of the 2 New York teams, the high expectations, he's finally adjusted to it because I feel he may have not been kind of in his comfort zone after being in Miami, a team that, even though I've seen, I have a cousin born in South Florida that's a Marlins fan, so I made the joke, remember like the M&M's commercial with Santa? They do exist.
Yeah.
I said that to my cousin once when I was visiting Florida, when I noticed he was wearing a Marlins jersey. I knew he was a Marlins fan, but seeing him wear the jersey, I jokingly said, they do exist. Exactly what I was talking about, but obviously that stadium, usually you hardly find anybody there, and Giancarlo Stanton was playing with very low expectations at that time. So now all of a sudden he's on the Yankees. I mean, Yankees, it's always high expectations. Looked like it may have taken him a while to kind of adjust to it. Now he looks like he's finally made that quick turnaround, and he's adjusted to it, and he's having what I have to say, arguably his best season as a Yankee.
Yeah, it's definitely right up there. I mean, that first year he had as a Yankee, hit 38 home runs, and it was a pretty good year. But I think you're right, man. I think this looks like his best all-around year at the Yankees now. He looks comfortable. He looks, in his own skin. It looks to me like the Yankees are finally getting the best of him. And, one thing, too, with Giancarlo is I think he's healthy now, too, which is a big thing. Over the last couple of years, his first year or two at the Yankees, 18, he was very healthy. That's why he had the decent numbers that year. But the couple of years after that, 19, 20, really struggled with injuries and couldn't stay on the field. And, even 21 was back and forth with the DL. This year, he's been healthy for the most of the season. He's been putting up big numbers. He's been hitting home runs in big spots. Like even, we saw him hit the big 3-run home run today. He erased a 3-run deficit last week against Houston as well, the same way. Opposite field, 3-run shot. So, yeah, I totally agree with you. I think he's finally comfortable as a Yankee, and he's healthy. That's a big bet. But
he's having a monster season. I think if I'm correct, he's a free agent. He's going to be the money, whatever he's going to get in free agency is going to be astronomical.
Oh, he's not a free agent. He's locked up for quite a few more years at the Yankees. You remember he signed that 13-year deal with the Marlins before he got traded to the Yankees. So I think he still at least has 6 or 7 years left on that deal.
Talking about it, Judge.
Oh, Judge, yes. Yeah, Judge is definitely a free agent.
Yeah, that guy, he's playing astronomically. He's going to be – I mean, he looks like one of those seasons that each time he puts up those numbers, there might as well be a cha-ching sound effect.
Yeah, I mean, and he's also, on pace to hit 60 home runs this year. He turned down – a $215 or so million contract for the Yankees where they were going to pay him an average of $30 million a year. He's looking closer for 35 to 40. Do you think that he breaks a $300 million contract?
I'm not sure he's going to break that money because I think that the highest owner is going to go that far, but he's getting high contract. Like, because of the circumstances now, I mean, before it looked like we only had one owner that was willing in the past, the Steinbrenners that was willing to spend all that money. We have an owner like Steve Cohen now. It could be a highly contested. It's not a lock that he's going to be that'll return to the Yankees. Let's put it this way.
No, I agree with you. It's definitely not a lock that he goes back to the Yankees, but I think, the most likely thing to happen is that he's gonna remain a Yankee. I think whatever deal that he's offered from whether it be the Mets or the Red Sox or San Francisco, the Giants, whoever offers him the biggest contract when he does become a free agent, I think the Yankees are going to match it, if not go over it, and keep him back because, boy, it would just be terrible if the Yankees lost Aaron Judge in any way, especially after the year he's having. And, I mean, much like Stanton, like me and you just talked about, the one thing that you could point to Aaron Judge in his career is his inability to stay healthy. And you could be like, well, I don't know if I want to pay him because of that. But he has just completely shut that up as he has stayed 100% healthy this year. He's been the best player in the league all year since game one. So you just got to tip your cap to Judge.
Here, their biggest competition is going to be probably in the postseason once they face a team that has top pitching.
Well, I mean, hey, look, we have to give them credit because they did face top pitching this weekend in Houston, and they took 2 out of 3 from them. And sure, they got no hit in that middle game, but those other 2 games they did win. So we got to give the Yankees credit where credit's due because, look, we went 0-4 against Houston. We could not touch them, and the Mets had one of the best offenses in baseball coming into these series, and instead we went 0-4, and the Yankees took 2 out of 3. Now, the big test for the Yankees is going to be this weekend when they go to Houston because luckily for them, too, the Yankees don't have to face Verlander, which I don't know why Dusty decided to flip the rotation where the Mets got stuck facing Verlander. If you're the Astros manager, wouldn't you rather Verlander face the Yankees than the Mets?
Exactly. I would have rather have saved Verlander for probably going to be the toughest opponent.
Yeah, and an American League rival who they've been going back and forth with for the last 5, 6, 7 years. If you want to go all the way back to 2015, when those teams played in the wild card game. So, yeah, just very surprising that Dusty went that route, because I knew the Mets were getting Framber Valdez yesterday, who dominated the Mets for 8 shutout innings, and just like the same thing that Verlander did today, and the Mets ended up losing this game 2-0. Very, very terrible run of offense and very great pitching they've come against.
Like, so early in the game, the deficit we were behind, that I even sarcastically said, and I would have lived up to, just to let you know, one of my Twitter followers, I would have lived up to what I said to that Twitter follower, that I said, yeah, if the Mets overcome this deficit, I will video myself singing the Broadway show tune of your choosing.
That would have been great.
May have been a little disappointed that the Mets didn't overcome the deficit. That may have wanted to see me, well, if you can call it singing, and since I'm not really a broad.
You could have been like that clip that Eastside Dave always shows of his mom singing those show tunes.
Well, I wasn't going to do that. I was going to legitimately, if I said I was going to legitimately do that, I would legitimately end up probably butchering that song. Well, I'm here to say that if the Mets make the playoffs, me, and you want to be in on this, we'll both sing that song. We'll both video us singing that very song.
What? There's no business like show business?
Oh, that I'll send you the tweet, the song that Twitter follower picked.
Okay, I'm down, Dan. I'm in. If the Mets make the playoffs, we're in.
All right. We will sing that. We will post a video of us singing that song.
Exactly. You heard it here first on Best Seat in the House podcast, that if the Mets make the playoffs, me and Dan will be singing that show tune one way or another. And, as a matter of fact, with that, Dan, I think we're just about running out of time here. Before we get out of here, give yourself a couple of plugs.
Sure, you could Bobo103 NYC on Twitter, Bobo718DJ on Instagram, and Daniel Kurlan on YouTube.
That's right. You can subscribe and follow Dan on there. And if you want to check me out, you can look at my Twitter at KramerNY, or you can check out our podcast Twitter account at BSith_podcast. Also check out Best Seat in the House podcast on Instagram. And don't forget to like and subscribe all of our videos on YouTube as well. So once again, thanks everybody for tuning in and checking out another episode of Best Seat in the House here. I'm Rob Cramer, alongside my co-host Daniel Bobo Kurlan, saying goodbye to everybody. Thank you for tuning in, and have a great weekend. And a 4th of July. We'll catch you next week on Best Seat in the House podcast.